The darkness of space was a silent witness to humanity's downfall. Once a thriving species on Earth, humanity was now cast out, abandoned by the galaxy's most powerful forces. They had been betrayed, left to die in the cold void of the universe. The alien empires that had once controlled vast sections of the cosmos saw no value in Earth or its people. Humanity was exiled, sent to the darkest, most isolated corner of space, a place where no one dared to venture. The message was clear: Earth would never rise again. As the massive fleets of the alien empires disappeared into the distance, the humans were left stranded on their fragile ships. No resources, no allies, no hope. The void stretched out before them like an endless ocean, cold and unforgiving. In this desolate place, no one could hear their cries, and no help would come. They were alone. But what the galaxy didn't know was that humanity was far from helpless. The first days of exile were filled with panic and uncertainty. The human fleet, scattered and broken, struggled to stay alive. They had no choice but to adapt quickly or perish. Food and water were running out. The technology they once relied on was damaged and useless. Yet, amidst the chaos, a strange thing happened. Humanity didn't give up. Captain Laura Torres of the Earth Fleet stared out at the endless void, her face grim. The rest of her crew worked feverishly to keep their ship from falling apart. "We can't just sit here and wait to die," she said to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. The thought of surrendering was unthinkable. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the future of their species. They had to find a way out of this. Days turned into weeks, and the humans learned to survive. They salvaged whatever they could from their broken ships. They repurposed weapons, found new ways to produce oxygen, and grew food in makeshift gardens. But as the days passed, it became clear that this would not be enough. They couldn't stay hidden forever. The universe would soon forget about them. And the alien empires, with their vast fleets and unchallenged power, would eventually turn their eyes to the humans again. But then something unexpected happened. One day, as the humans were scavenging the wreckage of their ships, they picked up a strange signal. At first, it was faint, barely detectable, but it was there. A transmission that seemed to come from nowhere. A signal hidden deep in the void. The crew of the flagship, Endurance, gathered around their communications officer, Sergeant Jameson. His fingers flew over the controls as he tried to amplify the signal. It flickered and sputtered, but then it became clearer. It wasn't a random transmission. It was a message. But who could it be? Who could be sending a signal in the middle of this desolate space, far from any known civilization? "We've got something," Sergeant Jameson said, his voice filled with disbelief. "It's not a standard distress call. This is something else." Captain Torres stood up, her eyes narrowing. "Play it," she ordered. The crew fell silent as the signal filled the room. It was a short message, almost cryptic. "We know you're out there. You are not alone. Do not trust what you have been told. The galaxy has underestimated you." The message ended as quickly as it had begun, leaving the crew stunned. For a long moment, no one spoke. The words echoed in their minds. Do not trust what you have been told. Who was this mysterious source? Could this be a trap? Or was it a message from someone, something, that believed in humanity's survival? Captain Torres could feel the weight of the moment. She had spent weeks struggling to keep the fleet alive, trying to hold on to hope. And now, out of nowhere, this message had appeared. It was a spark of possibility in the endless dark. "We need to investigate," Captain Torres said, her voice steady, but her heart racing. "Set a course to follow the signal. We need to know who or what is out there." The crew didn't hesitate. Despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, they all knew that this was their chance. It could be a trap, yes. But what if it wasn't? What if this mysterious signal was their chance to rise again, to prove to the galaxy that humanity was not so easily forgotten? As the ship changed course, heading into the unknown, a feeling of determination filled the air. Humanity had been exiled, abandoned to die in the dark. But they weren't finished. Not yet. The ship moved forward, the endless black of space stretching out before them. But as the Endurance sailed deeper into the unknown, Captain Torres couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Was the signal a sign of help, or were the galaxy's enemies waiting for the perfect moment to strike? Whatever the truth was, humanity would not go down without a fight. This was their chance. The galaxy might have forgotten them, but humanity would remind them. The journey ahead was filled with danger and uncertainty, but for the first time in weeks, Captain Torres felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could rise from the ashes of their exile. But who was this mysterious force that had sent the signal? And why had they chosen now to reach out? As the Endurance moved deeper into space, the answers were still far from clear. But one thing was certain: the fight for humanity's survival was far from over. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The Endurance moved cautiously through the black expanse, its engines humming softly, cutting through the vast silence of space. The crew was on edge. The signal they had received still echoed in their minds, leaving them with more questions than answers. Who had sent it? Why now, after everything they had endured? And most importantly, could they trust it? Captain Torres stood at the command console, her hands gripping the edges. Her mind raced as the ship moved deeper into the void. Each passing second felt heavier than the last. The signal had led them here, but they had no way of knowing what lay ahead. Were they being lured into a trap, or was this truly their chance at salvation? "Commander, we're still on course," Lieutenant Harold said from the navigation station. "The signal is consistent. We should be within range of its source in approximately 12 hours. Captain Torres nodded, but the uncertainty weighed heavily on her. "Keep a sharp eye on any anomalies," she ordered. "We can't afford to be caught off guard." The crew worked in near silence, each person lost in their own thoughts. It had been so long since they'd encountered anything familiar, any sign of life. It was hard to imagine that someone, or something, was out there, waiting for them. After weeks of isolation, the very idea of help felt almost surreal. Sergeant Jameson, the communications officer, turned from his station. "Captain, I've been scanning the signal's frequency. There's something strange about it. It doesn't match any known transmissions. It's almost as if it's been designed specifically for us to find it." That caught Torres's attention. "What do you mean?" The message was too precise, too calculated. Whoever sent it knew we would be looking for something. It's as if they knew exactly where we'd be, and when we'd be there. Torres' stomach tightened. "A trap?" "I don't know," Jameson admitted, "but it's definitely not random." Torres rubbed her temples, trying to push aside the gnawing sense of danger. It was a risk, but they had no other choice. Without this lead, they were stuck in the dark, adrift in the void with no direction. "Continue to monitor it," she said, finally breaking the silence. "We need every bit of information we can get." The hours stretched on, the crew working tirelessly as the Endurance drew closer to the origin of the signal. It wasn't long before the ship's scanners detected something unusual. A large, dark object, possibly a derelict ship, loomed ahead, its outline barely visible against the blackness of space. "Captain," Lieutenant Harold said, his voice tight, "we found something." The crew gathered around the main screen, eyes fixed on the monitor. The ship in front of them was old, its surface marred by deep scars. It seemed to have been abandoned for years, its power systems shut down long ago. The only thing that kept it visible in the dark was the faint glow of emergency lights, flickering weakly. "We're not alone," Torres muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. The Endurance moved closer, its engines slowing as they neared the derelict vessel. The crew remained tense, unsure of what to expect. Was this the source of the signal? And if so, why had it been left in such a state of disrepair? It didn't make sense. "Prepare boarding teams," Torres ordered, her voice firm. "We're going to find out what happened here." A sense of unease settled over the crew as they suited up for the boarding operation. Everyone knew the risks. It wasn't just the emptiness of space they had to worry about. The unknown ship could be dangerous, its former crew either dead or long gone. But they had no choice. The signal had led them here, and they couldn't ignore it. As the airlock cycled and the boarding team prepared to step into the dark, Captain Torres stood at the command station, watching the crew move into position. Her heart pounded in her chest. What if the message was a lie? What if they were walking into a trap set by the very empires that had cast them into the void? "We'll find answers," she whispered to herself. "We have to." The outer doors of the Endurance opened with a soft hiss, and the crew made their way across to the derelict ship. The silence of space was deafening as they crossed the gap, their footsteps muffled by their suits. The old ship loomed before them like a ghost, its once proud form now little more than a forgotten relic. The airlock of the derelict vessel opened with a heavy groan, revealing a dark, dusty corridor inside. The crew moved in cautiously, their weapons raised, eyes scanning for any signs of life or death. The walls were lined with strange markings, symbols that none of the crew could recognize. It was clear that this was no ordinary ship. But who had built it? And why had they left it here, abandoned in the middle of nowhere? As they moved deeper into the ship, the silence grew oppressive. There was no sign of the crew. The only sound was the soft hum of the Endurance's systems, still echoing in their suits. Then, without warning, the lights flickered on. The sudden illumination was almost blinding. But as their eyes adjusted, the crew saw something that sent a chill down their spines. A massive, intricate map spread across the wall in front of them. The map was filled with star systems, routes, and pathways they had never seen before. Captain Torres stepped forward, her breath catching in her throat. This was no ordinary star map. It was something far older, far more advanced than anything humanity had ever known. And it was clear that it had been left here for a reason. The map began to glow faintly, and as Torres looked closer, she realized something even more chilling. The map was incomplete. There were blank spaces, dark areas where no stars existed. It was as if someone had intentionally left gaps, or perhaps left something hidden. And then, just as the crew began to absorb the full weight of their discovery, the signal returned. But this time, it was different. It wasn't just a simple message. It was a voice that sent shivers down their spines. "We are waiting for you." The crew froze, the message ringing in their ears. The signal wasn't from some unknown alien race. It was a warning. It was something else, something much older. And it was waiting. The voice seemed to respond directly to her question, as if it had anticipated it. "You are not alone, Captain Torres. The exile has ended. The war will begin soon." The room seemed to grow colder, the lights flickering erratically. The voice continued, its tone calm, but filled with an unsettling finality. "You were exiled. But now you are needed. The galaxy's fate depends on you." Captain Torres's heart skipped a beat. She had heard of the exile, the event that had cast humanity to the farthest reaches of space, forgotten by the galaxy. But she had never imagined that it would come back to haunt them like this. She had never imagined that their survival would hinge on the very forces that had tried to erase them. "Are you saying this is all a trap?" Torres asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The voice responded, sending a chill down her spine. "No, Captain. It is not a trap. It is a reckoning." The object on the pedestal began to pulse faster, and the entire room vibrated with an energy unlike anything the crew had ever felt. The walls seemed to shift, and for a moment, everything was bathed in a blinding light. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light faded, and the room returned to its eerie calm. The object on the pedestal was gone. "Captain, we need to leave now," Sergeant Jameson urged, his voice strained. "Something's not right." But Torres stood frozen, staring at the empty pedestal. The voice, the message, the strange object. They were all connected. And whatever lay ahead, whatever the galaxy had in store for them, humanity was about to face a reckoning that would either destroy them or change the fate of the cosmos forever. "We have to move quickly," she said, her voice now filled with determination. "Something big is coming." As the crew rushed back toward the Endurance, the weight of their discovery pressed down on them. Whatever was waiting for them, it was already too late to turn back. The Endurance was barely halfway through the debris field when the crew felt the first tremors. At first, they thought it was another malfunction, just another quirk of the ship's aged systems. But the tremors didn't stop. They grew more intense, shaking the ship with a force that rattled the metal walls. Captain Torres gripped the console tightly, her knuckles white as she struggled to steady herself. The ship's emergency lights flickered to life, bathing the control room in a red hue that only heightened the sense of urgency. "What the hell is happening?" Lieutenant Harold shouted over the growing roar of alarms. "I don't know," Torres replied, her voice strained. "But I have a feeling this isn't a coincidence." Suddenly, the ship's comm system crackled to life, cutting through the chaos. "Endurance, this is command. You need to turn back. Now." Torres froze, her heart pounding in her chest. "Command, what's going on?" "We're being pulled off course." "Listen to me, Captain." The voice on the comms crackled. "This is not just an anomaly. It's a full-scale invasion. You're not the only ship out there. There are more. Alien fleets have already entered your sector." A cold sweat broke out across Torres's forehead. Her mind raced as the weight of the situation began to sink in. "Invasion? From who?" "From the ones who exiled you," came the chilling response. "They're coming for you. For Earth. For everything." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving nothing but static behind. The silence that followed was deafening, as the crew exchanged nervous glances. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut through with a knife. "What do we do now, Captain?" Harold asked, his voice shaky. Torres didn't respond immediately. She was too busy processing the implications of the message. They had been exiled, abandoned, left to die in the darkest corners of space. But now, it seemed like humanity's greatest enemy, whoever they were, had returned, and this time, they were ready to finish what they had started. "Prepare for battle," Torres said, her voice calm but filled with a quiet resolve. "We're not running. Not this time." The crew scrambled into action, each member moving with purpose. The hum of the engines, the clicking of keyboards, and the frantic footsteps filled the air as the ship's systems were brought online. "Captain, incoming transmissions. Unknown source," reported Sergeant Jameson from the communications console. His eyes were wide with disbelief. They're targeting us." Torres' stomach clenched. She turned to him. "Put it on screen." A strange symbol appeared on the screen. It was alien, unlike anything they had ever seen. The design was intricate, almost organic, as if the symbol itself were alive. And then, beneath the symbol, a message appeared. "Your time is up. Surrender now, or face total annihilation." Torres's fists clenched. She could almost feel the weight of the words pressing down on her. They were facing something unlike anything humanity had ever known. The galaxy's greatest powers had underestimated them once before, but now it seemed their return was no longer a possibility. It was a certainty. "Are we even capable of fighting back?" Harold asked, a hint of fear in his voice. Torres's eyes narrowed as she stared at the symbol. "We have no choice but to fight. Humanity has been forgotten. But we've survived. We've always survived." The crew continued to prepare for what they knew would be the fight of their lives. The tension was unbearable, the silence in between commands heavy with anticipation. As they prepared to engage the alien forces, the voice from earlier, echoing through the mysterious map and the derelict ship, suddenly filled the room again. "You are not ready for what awaits you. Your strength is not enough. But we will help you." The voice sent a chill down Torres's spine. Who was this? Was it another trap? Or were they finally hearing from the mysterious force that had been watching them all this time? "Help us," Torres muttered under her breath, eyes narrowing in suspicion. "We'll see about that." But before she could think further, the alarms blared again. Louder this time. The first wave of alien ships had arrived, their silhouettes appearing in the distance, massive and imposing against the backdrop of space. "Captain, they're here," Jameson said, his voice tense. Torres gritted her teeth. "I know. All hands to battle stations." The crew scrambled into action, positioning themselves at their designated stations. The adrenaline was thick in the air, and everyone knew that this would be a fight to the death. The Endurance might be small compared to the alien fleets, but humanity had one thing the invaders didn't: determination. The Endurance shuddered as the first shots were fired. Explosions rocked the ship, the force of the blasts threatening to tear it apart. But the crew held firm. They had been cast out, abandoned, and left to die. But now they had something to prove. They were no longer the exiles. They were a force to be reckoned with. "Engage evasive maneuvers," Torres shouted over the intercom. "We will not go down without a fight." The Endurance veered sharply, dodging the enemy fire. The alien ships loomed large, their advanced weapon systems unleashing powerful blasts that collided with the Endurance's shields, sending ripples of energy through the ship's hull. "Shield holding at 70%, Harold reported, his voice strained but steady. "But we can't take much more of this." Torres's mind raced. She had to act fast. The ship's weapon systems were primitive compared to the alien forces, but they still had one advantage: their resolve. And if there was even a small chance that the voice was telling the truth, they had to fight on. "Activate all weapons," she commanded. "Give them everything we've got." The Endurance fired back, unleashing a barrage of missiles and laser blasts. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the tide might turn in their favor, but the alien forces were relentless, their firepower overwhelming. Just as the ship's shields began to flicker and fade, the voice spoke again, more forcefully this time. "You are not alone, Captain Torres. We will guide you." A strange energy surged through the Endurance. The ship's systems came to life in ways no one could explain, and the crew could feel an unexpected power pulsing through the hull. Suddenly, the tide of battle shifted. The alien ships began to falter, their movements erratic. It was as though they were being forced back by an unseen hand. "Is this you?" Torres whispered, her heart racing. "Are you the one who has been watching us?" "We are the ones who have waited for you," the voice responded, calm and commanding. "Now fight, and you will win." With newfound strength, the Endurance fought back, each blow striking true. The invaders, caught off guard, began to retreat. But the battle was far from over. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. Humanity was not to be underestimated. As the first wave of alien ships retreated into the dark void, Captain Torres knew that this was just the beginning. The war had begun, and humanity, exiled and forgotten, would rise once again. The Endurance drifted through the shattered remnants of the alien fleet, its systems humming with an unfamiliar energy. The battle had been won, but only just. Captain Torres, her face set in a grim expression, stood at the helm, her hands tight on the controls. The ship had survived the first wave, but she knew that this was only the beginning. The true test was yet to come. "Captain, we've sustained heavy damage," Lieutenant Harold reported from the engineering console, his voice tense. "Hull integrity is at 40%, and we've lost 2 of our main turrets. We need repairs, or we won't make it through the next round." Torres nodded but said nothing. There was no time for regrets. She turned to Surgeon Jameson, who was monitoring the ship's scanners. "What's the status on the enemy fleet?" she asked. Jameson's eyes narrowed as he scanned the data on the screen. "There's a fleet of at least 30 ships heading straight for us, Captain. They've regrouped and are preparing for another assault. They're stronger than before, and we've barely scratched the surface. A shiver ran down Torres's spine. She had been prepared for a fight. But this was war. The invaders had not only returned to finish what they had started, they had come with overwhelming numbers and firepower. Humanity's survival was now in question. "Get the fighters in the air," Torres ordered, her voice firm. "We need every hand on deck for this. We're not just going to survive. We're going to win." The crew sprang into action. The hangar bay doors slid open, and the sleek, powerful fighters of the Endurance launched into space, roaring toward the oncoming alien fleet. The air in the control room grew thick with tension, each person silently preparing for the chaos to come. "Captain, the alien ships are advancing," Jameson called out. "They're opening fire. Brace for impact." The first wave of enemy fire struck the Endurance with terrifying force, sending shockwaves through the hull. Sparks flew from the control panels as the ship rocked violently. "Shields at 20%, Harold shouted, his voice strained. "We can't hold this much longer." Torres's mind raced. They were outmatched, outgunned. But humanity had never been one to give up. They had been cast aside, forgotten by the galaxy. But now they had something to prove. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about fighting for their place in the stars. "Order the fighters to take down their shields," Torres said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "We're going to do what no one else could." The fighters, agile and deadly, darted through the vast expanse of space, swarming the alien ships like a cloud of wasps. The Endurance fired its remaining weapons in a desperate bid to hold off the incoming assault. "Direct hit," Jameson shouted, pointing to the display. "The lead ship is down." Torres felt a surge of hope, but it was short-lived. The remaining alien ships began to regroup, using their advanced technology to repair and reinforce their damaged vessels. "We've only taken down one," Harold warned. "There are still 29 left, and they're getting closer." Torres's eyes narrowed as she studied the battlefield. The alien ships were relentless, their tactics more coordinated than anything humanity had faced before. The odds were stacked against them, but she refused to back down. She wasn't alone. The crew of the Endurance had come this far. There was no turning back now. "We need something bigger," Torres muttered under her breath. "Captain," Jameson asked, confused. "We can't win this fight by playing their game," Torres said, her mind racing. "We need to strike them where it hurts." She turned to Harold, who was already typing furiously on his console. "Can we access the ship's reserve power?" "Everything we've got. Shields, weapons, engines. I need it all." Harold hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "It's going to push the ship beyond its limits, Captain. If we do this, we might lose the Endurance entirely." Torres met his gaze with unyielding determination. "If we don't do this, we'll lose everything." Without another word, Harold began to override the systems, pushing the ship's reserves to the breaking point. The lights in the control room flickered as the ship's energy surged, feeding into its weapons and shields. The Endurance was on the verge of overload, but it was their only chance. "All systems at maximum," Harold announced, his voice tinged with excitement. "Now or never, Captain." Torres gave the order, her voice cold and steady. "Fire everything we've got." The Endurance unleashed a barrage of firepower, its weapons blazing across the battlefield. The alien ships, caught off guard by the sudden surge of power, faltered in their assault. Explosions erupted in the void as the Endurance's weapons found their mark. But just as the tide seemed to turn in humanity's favor, the alien ships adapted. Their shields began to glow with an unnatural energy, absorbing the Endurance's blasts and redirecting them back toward the ship. "We can't keep this up," Harold shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "The power's draining too quickly." "Hold the line," Torres ordered, her voice firm. "We can't stop now." The Endurance continued to fight, its weapons blazing and its shields holding for as long as they could. But the alien ships were relentless, their weapons slicing through space with deadly accuracy. The crew was exhausted, their nerves stretched thin, but they kept fighting. Every moment they held off the invaders bought them precious time. Then, just as they were beginning to lose hope, a strange energy surged through the Endurance, like a beacon from the depths of space. A voice, low and powerful, filled the ship's comm system. "You are not alone. We have watched. We have waited. Now we rise." The Endurance shuddered, and then, as if by some unseen force, the alien ships began to pull back, their movements sluggish and uncertain. The voice spoke again, its tone commanding. "Fight. You will not fall today." The alien fleet, caught in the grip of an unknown force, hesitated, and for the first time, the Endurance had the upper hand. Captain Torres knew that this was not the end. The fight was far from over, but humanity had finally found its strength. And now, with an unexpected ally, the storm of war was beginning to shift in their favor. The battle in space was far from over, but the Endurance had managed to push the alien forces back, at least for the moment. The voice that had filled the ship's comm system continued to echo in the crew's ears, a strange, almost eerie presence in the midst of the chaos. They could feel it, an energy that seemed to surge from deep within the ship itself, empowering them, giving them strength when they needed it most. Captain Torres stood at the command console, her brow furrowed in concentration. The alien ships had pulled back, but it wasn't a retreat. They were regrouping, preparing for another strike. The Endurance was battered, barely holding together, but it had one advantage the invaders didn't: the mysterious force that had intervened. "What do we do now, Captain?" Lieutenant Harold asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "We've barely survived this round, and the enemy's not done yet. And whatever just happened, I don't understand it." Torres's gaze remained fixed on the tactical display, her mind racing. She knew they couldn't wait around for the aliens to come back in full force. They had been given a chance, an opportunity to strike, and she wasn't about to waste it. "We keep fighting," she said, her voice firm. "But we need to figure out where this power is coming from. We have an ally, whether we understand it or not. And we need to know how to use that power before the aliens regroup." Suddenly, the voice returned, sending a chill down Torres's spine. "Captain Torres, you are not as alone as you think." The words felt heavy, as if they carried the weight of centuries. The voice was calm, but there was an authority to it that made the hairs on the back of Torres's neck stand up. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "We are the Watchers," the voice responded, echoing in every corner of the ship. "We have observed your species for millennia. We have seen the depths of your potential, and now we offer you a chance to fulfill that potential." Torres exchanged a glance with Harold. This was beyond anything they had ever encountered. An ancient, mysterious force, watching them from the shadows, offering help when all seemed lost. "Why now?" Harold asked. "Why intervene now, when we're on the brink of destruction?" "The time is ripe," the voice replied. "Your survival is not just about you. It is about the balance of the cosmos. The alien invaders who threaten you have spread their influence across the galaxy, conquering without mercy. They must be stopped. But to do so, you must first understand the power that lies dormant within you. You are not as weak as they think." The ship's systems suddenly flickered, and a new set of data appeared on the screens. It was a map that stretched far beyond the reaches of known space, into regions humanity had never ventured. Torres's eyes widened as she studied the holographic projection. This is a map of the galaxy." "Yes," the voice confirmed, "but it is more than that. It is a map of potential, a map of the hidden energy that flows through the stars. You have only begun to tap into this power, but now you must learn to master it." Torres's heart raced. Could this really be happening? Had humanity truly been watched, guided by some unseen force? And what did it mean for their future? "We will help you," the voice continued. but you must follow our instructions. Trust in the power that has been awakened within your ship and in your crew. Together, you can defeat the invaders." A sudden surge of energy rippled through the Endurance, as if the ship itself had come alive. The crew stumbled as the ship's systems adjusted, realigning to some unseen command. The lights flickered for a moment, then steadied. The hum of the engines became deeper, more resonant, as if the Endurance was drawing from an ancient hidden well of power. "Captain, something's happening," Harold said, his voice full of awe. "The systems, they are changing. The ship's energy output is increasing exponentially." Torres could feel it too. The Endurance was alive in a way it had never been before. It was as though it had become a vessel for something far greater than human engineering, an instrument of something that had been waiting, hidden in the depths of space, to be awakened. "Prepare the crew," Torres ordered, her voice low but determined. "We're not just defending anymore. We're going on the offensive. We have to strike before the aliens regroup." As she spoke, the ship's weapon systems powered up. The hum of energy coursing through the hull was no longer a dull mechanical sound. It was a pulse, a beat, as if the ship had become part of a living organism. And humanity, once exiled and forgotten, was now at the center of something far larger than they could have ever imagined. "We are ready," the voice said, its presence resonating in the ship's very core. "Now go. Show the galaxy what humanity is capable of." With a final, decisive command, Torres ordered the Endurance to launch into the heart of the alien fleet. The ship's powerful engines roared to life, sending it hurtling forward with a force that no one had expected. The crew braced themselves as the ship broke through the barrier of space, heading straight for the alien invaders. The battle was far from over, but now, humanity had a chance to win. With new allies, new power, and an unshakable resolve, they would fight with everything they had. And this time, the invaders would not be the ones who decided their fate. They would fight. And they would win. The Endurance surged forward, cutting through space like a blade through the dark fabric of the galaxy. Captain Torres stood at the helm, her hand steady on the controls as the ship's new power thrummed beneath her feet. The crew was silent, each member lost in their own thoughts as they prepared for the final battle. The calm before the storm. Through the massive viewing window, the galaxy stretched out in front of them, an expanse of stars and planets that seemed almost unreal. Yet, beyond the shimmering stars lay the alien armada, a monstrous force that threatened to crush humanity's fragile existence. But now, the odds were different. The voice, the mysterious entity that had been guiding them, had given them the knowledge and power to strike back. The Endurance was no longer just a ship. It had become an instrument of war, a symbol of humanity's defiance. And with every passing second, they grew stronger. "Captain, the enemy fleet is in sight," Lieutenant Harold reported, his voice tight with tension. "They'd got more ships than we anticipated. It's a full-on assault." Torres nodded, her expression grim but resolute. The odds were overwhelming, but humanity had learned long ago that when the chips were down, they didn't back down. They fought harder, smarter, and with more heart than any other species in the galaxy. "Prepare for battle stations," Torres commanded, her voice firm and unwavering. "Let's show them what humanity is capable of." The crew scrambled into position, every member of the Endurance aware of the gravity of the moment. The alien fleet was vast, stretching across the starfield like a dark cloud. Ships of all shapes and sizes loomed ahead, their weaponry ready for the final push to crush humanity once and for all. But something was different now. The Endurance wasn't just another ship. It had become something more. With the power of the Watchers flowing through it, the ship was a force to be reckoned with. The first wave of enemy ships closed in, their weapons charging. Torres took a deep breath, watching as the alien ships began to fire. But she didn't flinch. She wasn't afraid. Humanity had come too far to be scared now. "Open fire," Torres ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos of the control room. The Endurance fired back, a barrage of laser beams and energy pulses streaking across the dark void. The first alien ship was obliterated in an instant, its hull erupting in a violent explosion of sparks and debris. The crew cheered, but there was no time for celebration. The battle had only just begun. "Keep firing. Don't let up," Torres commanded, her eyes locked on the advancing enemy. The Endurance fired again and again, each blast hitting its target with deadly precision. The alien fleet was vast, but the ship had the advantage of speed and maneuverability. The Endurance danced through the battlefield, avoiding incoming fire with breathtaking agility, a testament to the new energy that powered it. But the alien armada was relentless. They regrouped, bringing their full firepower to bear on the Endurance, and the ship was soon battered from all sides. Sparks flew from the walls of the control room, and the entire ship shook as the enemy's weapons found their mark. "Hull breach in Sector 3, Harold shouted. "We've lost power to the rear shields. Focus fire on their command ship," Torres ordered. She knew that the heart of the enemy fleet had to be destroyed, or they'd never stand a chance. "All units, target their leader." The Endurance locked onto the largest enemy ship in the fleet, a massive vessel that appeared to be at the center of the alien formation. With its shields down, it was vulnerable. But as the ship's weapons powered up, the Endurance suddenly rocked violently as an unknown force surged through it. The power from the Watchers flared, and a blinding light enveloped the ship. "What the hell is happening?" Lieutenant Harold yelled, gripping the console as the lights flickered. "It's the energy," Torres said, her voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. "We're connected to it. It's amplifying the Endurance's power." The ship pulsed with newfound strength, its weapons now firing with incredible force. The alien command ship fired its weapons, but the Endurance dodged, weaving through the explosions and returning fire with precision that was almost unnatural. In an instant, the alien command ship's shields failed, and a single powerful strike from the Endurance tore through its hull. The ship erupted in a violent explosion, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The remaining alien ships faltered, their coordination breaking down. The Endurance was relentless now, moving like a predator through the chaos. One by one, the alien ships fell, their once imposing firepower reduced to nothing more than sparks and debris. The crew of the Endurance watched in stunned silence as the last of the alien fleet was destroyed. The stars above them, once dark and foreboding, now seemed brighter. The battle was over. Humanity had won. But as the dust settled, the crew knew this victory wasn't just about defeating the invaders. It was about something much larger. Humanity had been exiled, forgotten, left to die in the darkness of space. But now, they had proven their worth. They had shown the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. The Endurance drifted through the stars, battered but triumphant. And as the crew looked out into the vast unknown, they knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They had risen from the shadows to take their place among the stars. The galaxy would never be the same again.